Wow. A bombshell just got dropped that could echo across the world and could even lead to nuclear war. I mean, this is just astonishing. Carly Fiorina, about 5 minutes ago or 10 minutes ago, walked out of Trump Tower and met with reporters and said, yes, I just had a wonderful, I'm paraphrasing this from memory. I just watched it on television. And said, yes, I had a wonderful meeting with Donald Trump. It was amazing, all the goodies in his office that he's gotten from famous sports athletes and things. And we had a very productive meeting about our mutual concern about our adversary, China. Adversary? Meanwhile, you've got Christine Pelosi, who has authored a letter to James Clapper, the director of national intelligence. She is she's Nancy Pelosi's daughter, but she's also politically active. She's a filmmaker. She's a progressive activist. A good person. And as an elector from California, she and electors from Colorado, D.C., Maryland, New Hampshire, Rhode Island, and Texas have written this letter to Clapper, and they're asking others to sign on, saying, we are electors who were selected by the voters of our states to represent them in the Electoral College on December 19th. See, before I go any farther on this Electoral College stuff, and then I want to get back to China, but this has to do with Russia and hacking. The presidential election has not yet happened. And I realize, no, this is not an old show that's replaying. The presidential election happens on December 19th, when the 535 members of the Electoral College get together and cast their votes for president. And if 270 of them vote for a particular person, that person becomes president of the United States. And if nobody gets 270 votes, then it goes to the House of Representatives, and Paul Ryan and his friends get to decide who is president and vice president. There's two separate ballots, but they decide president and vice president of the United States. So the presidential election has not yet happened. What has happened is the vote for the electors, which many Americans think is the vote for president. But the fact of the matter is Hillary Clinton got about 3 million more votes than Donald Trump did. So if you're saying that the election for president has already happened, yeah, it already happened and Hillary Clinton won. Now the Electoral College votes, and what Christine Pelosi, excuse me, I thought it was Christina. Christine Pelosi and colleagues are asking is, we have a solemn responsibility here. We are the ones who actually vote for the president of the United States under the Constitution. The election will be held on the 19th, 7 days from today. What is that? Is that a week from today? I don't do calendars in my brain. It's either 1 week from today or from tomorrow. I think it's from tomorrow. But in any case, on the 19th, the Electoral College meets. And tomorrow, Greg Palast is going to be in the studio with us talking about the recount. He just left Michigan. In fact, I talked with Greg last night. He was stuck on an airplane on the tarmac in Detroit because they were having that giant snowstorm. And boy, what a mess. But I'll let Greg tell you that whole story because he's got the details, and I don't want to screw it up. That'll be tomorrow. But the Electoral College is meeting in a week. And they choose our president. And Christina Pelosi is saying, we would like to know, well, this is what the letter says. The Constitution envisions the Electoral College as a deliberative body that plays a critical role in our system of government, ensuring that the American people elect a president who is constitutionally qualified and fit to serve. She says, we further emphasize Alexander Hamilton's assertion in Federalist Paper number 68 that a core purpose of the Electoral College was to prevent, quote, a desire in foreign powers to gain an improper ascendant in our councils, end quote. So then the question becomes, is Donald Trump an agent of a foreign power or inappropriately close to a foreign power? And obviously, specifically in this case, everybody's talking about Russia. Trump confidant, Christina Pelosi says, Trump confidant Roger Stone confirmed during the campaign that he was engaged in back-channel communications with WikiLeaks founder Julian Assange, responsible for releasing much of the Russian-hacked Democratic communications, and indicated that he was aware of the hacked content prior to its release. She said the elector is required to know from the intelligence community whether there are ongoing investigations into ties between Donald Trump, his campaign, or associates, and Russian government interference in the election, the scope of those investigations, how far those investigations may have reached, and who was involved in those investigations. We further require a briefing on all investigative findings, as these matters directly impact the core factors in our deliberations of whether Mr. Trump is fit to serve as president of the United States. So the electors are saying, tell us what's going on. Meanwhile, bipartisan, John McCain, Lindsey Graham, Chuck Schumer, and Harry Reid, right? Arguably leadership of both parties in the Senate, issued a joint statement yesterday afternoon that said Democrats and Republicans must work together and across the jurisdictional lines of the Congress to examine these recent incidents thoroughly and devise comprehensive solutions to deter and defend against further cyber attacks. This cannot be a partisan issue. The stakes are too high for our country. So, broadly speaking, I do not disagree with any of that. What concerns me is, number one, Carly Fiorina saying that Donald Trump thinks that China is our adversary. And number two, all these stories in the media basically characterizing Russia as our adversary. These are nuclear weapon, what's the word? Nuclear armed states with whom we have done, I mean, you can't walk into a store and buy anything that's not made in China. I mean, we have a massive economic relationship with China. And Russia, I mean, Putin and Kerry, or Lavrov and Kerry, presumably, put together the Iran deal, which the Republicans are talking about taking apart. We'll see where that goes. I frankly doubt they will. And got rid of Syrian weapons of mass destruction together. And so Louise and I, over the weekend, we watched John Pilger's new movie, The Coming War on China. And he talks about how there are 400 U.S. military bases encircling China right now, which has China quite freaked out, which is, in his opinion, why they're building a military base in the Spratly Islands in the South China Sea. Whether that's the case or not, or whether they're just trying to extend their fishing rights because they've got a growing population and a growing middle class that's demanding protein, i.e. fish, is, in my opinion, up for debate. A reasonable subject for discussion. But first of all, we should split these two things apart, Russia and China. And with regard to China, in this documentary that I saw, and I highly recommend it to you. It's playing in the U.S. and RT. No American network picked it up. It's playing in the U.K. Regularly on television. In fact, Friday night I heard I listen to BBC when I go to sleep every night. It puts me to sleep. And there was this long interview on the BBC with John Pilger about his documentary. No such discussion in the United States. Apparently, it's like off the table. Because basically what he's saying is that the U.S. is on the edge of provoking what could be a nuclear war with China, which is not a good thing. Whether that's the case or not, there are people on both sides building cases, but it's something that we really, frankly, I think should be discussing. With regard to Russia, the thing that keeps getting lost in all this Sturm und Drang is that the allegation that Russia hacked the DNC and thus changed our election is an allegation that Americans, knowing that Debbie Wasserman Schultz and the DNC put their thumb on the scale against Bernie Sanders, which is the information that was hacked and released, changed the course of the election. Now, frankly, I'm skeptical that the Russian government itself did this. It doesn't surprise me at all that if anybody was hacked, it was the DNC, the RNC, whatever. It was hacked by Russian hackers. But even if it was, why is there no mention of the information that was actually released? Could it be that this is like, reason number 600 about why Trump won the election? I don't know. But the entire thing, I mean, we're wandering into, and rather blindly, with both of these countries, China and Russia, some dangerous demagogic territory with regard to our political dialogue and our political discourse. And this, frankly, concerns me. We need to be, in my opinion, we need to be figuring out ways to work with these two countries. Yeah, China, we may hate their human rights policies and, all the nasty stories about, prisoners having their kidneys removed and all this awful stuff. I mean, and it's not our job to run China. And, China has lifted 600 million people out of poverty. That's not bad. But, the question is China trying to control the world? I suspect not. China historically, this is one of the things in Pilger's documentary, this scholar on these topics, his name was Eric Lee. And he said that, thank you, Shane. He said that the issue with regard to China and the U.S., he said, what you have to understand, the reason Americans don't understand China is because we have, we're basically informed by Christianity and monotheism, which says, there's one God, there's one religion, there's one way, and everybody in the world has to end up that way. And so, we think that anybody who doesn't have our form of government and by implication our worldview at the very least is wrong or bad. He said, the Chinese don't think that way. It's a Buddhist country. It's an inward-looking country. They built the Great Wall, to keep the barbarians out. And they're trying to be defensive. Now, that may or may not be the case. Again, I'm not actually taking a specific position on any of this right now. I agree with Schumer and Reid and McCain and Lindsey Graham that the intelligence agencies need to put their cards on the table. They need to reveal what they know, because I keep reading these articles in the New York Times and the Washington Post about, oh, we finally figured it out. Yes, the Russians hacked the elections. Well, nobody's actually alleging that they hacked the elections, as in hacked voting machines. To the best of my knowledge, nobody's alleging that. I think it would be very difficult. You pretty much have to walk up to a voting machine and stick a USB port into it in order to change the outcome. Although I suppose, hacking the tabulators is possible. But, what's being alleged is that the Russians hacked the DNC and released the emails that demonstrated that Debbie Wasserman Schultz was trying to throw the Democratic primary to Hillary Clinton instead of Bernie Sanders. That's the allegation, which somehow never gets discussed. And I don't think that's what threw the election. But be that or as it may, if that was done by the Russian government, that's something we should know about. And it's not a good thing. I mean, you don't want any foreign government messing in your elections. So, yeah, let's put the cards on the table. Let's figure out what's going on here. But with regard to China, Donald Trump and Carly Fiorina saying they're our adversary, like militarily?
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
I mean, that's the kind of stuff, when you combine it with Trump's saying yesterday that he disregards the one China policy, that's the kind of stuff that could lead to World War III. Okay, meanwhile, welcome back. Thom Hartmann here with you. Meanwhile, the Global Times, which is a Chinese newspaper that generally reflects the point of view of the Chinese government, the Chinese Communist Party. Actually, before I get to that, let me tell you one other interesting thing that I learned from the documentary, this John Pilger documentary. And again, take this with a grain of salt. Take all this, we are in territory here where I have no certainty on any of these things, and I'm not finding it in anybody's reports. And we're hearing You know, on the one side, you know, the Trumps and the Republicans saying there's no there with Russians, the state of Russia hacking our elections, and you got Democrats going, oh, that's absolutely why Hillary Clinton lost the election, and therefore, you know, and or some Democrats, and I don't see clear evidence of on any of these sides yet, and I'm calling for that. I want our intelligence agencies to lay this stuff on the table and tell us everything they know. But meanwhile, you've got, you know, as I said, Carly Fiorina just announced on national television that Donald Trump believes that China is our adversary, our enemy. Meanwhile, okay, so which brings us back to the back to on Taiwan. Chinese media warns novice Donald Trump will help your enemies. The one China policy cannot be traded. An unsigned online commentary in the nationalistic Global Times said Monday, calling Trump, quote, as ignorant of diplomacy as a child. This is from Agence France Presse. It warned that if the U.S. openly supports Taiwan's independence and ramps up arms sales, China could aid forces hostile to the U.S. Why couldn't we publicly support them or secretly sell arms to them, it demanded? Really? And they're saying, no, there's this one China policy. I mean, it's starting to get weird out there in ways that could be very dangerous.
You're listening to the Thom Hartmann Program. Call 202-808-9925.
Which means in my mind that instead of yelling at each other, we need to be having conversations and we need information about all of this stuff.